A strange occurrence I came across. A talking rat. Doesn't make sense. Compels me, though.
Welcome back to Nostalgia Club. I'm Victoria, and I'm joined by my usual co-hosts. Why did you laugh?
I don't know.
Was it funny?
Hi, I'm Jino.
And I'm Michael.
Whoa!
And it's been a while, guys. It's been a really long time since we recorded Nostalgia Club, which is why we're maybe a little bit rusty. It's been like 4 months.
It's been 74 years. I don't know, what's that line in Titanic?
It's been 84 years.
I was off by 10. It's been 84 years.
Wait, it's been 84 years since Rose was on the Titanic?
Since Rose committed murder by negligence.
How old was she on the Titanic?
Young.
How?
Okay, now we have to look it up.
No, immediately off track. Hi, while Victoria's looking up Rose's canonical age.
We're so excited to be back.
We're excited, yeah.
Cue celebration noises. Put these in post.
It's the recap of season 3.
Rose was 17 in Titanic.
Whoa.
Okay. That...
I see. In my brain, Rose was like 22.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. But I guess in those days when you were like younger, that was when you know the parents, the upper crust matriarchal figure would be like, we must fix you with a man quickly because you can't own property and we must secure your future.
I guess. Wow. She lived a long time.
You know who did it a long time?
What? What? Huh?
I'm there.
Jack?
Jack.
Boom, boom,
She
boom.
sacrificed him for a lion. Okay, anyways. So this is our recap episode where we go through all of the episodes that we covered in season 3 and we talk about them. We're nostalgic for the episode in a way. So we reminisce on the episode itself, but also we cover any other side things that came up after the episode came out or after we recorded the episode. We maybe revise things that we said that we realized afterwards was inaccurate.
New thoughts, corrections.
We also go on a lot of tangents, so that's what you can expect from these recap episodes.
I don't think they could tell based off of our immediate Titanic tangent.
If this is your first episode of Nostalgia Club, weird place to start. Go somewhere else and start. Maybe an episode of season 3.
Season 3 is pretty good. I really think that we hit our stride in season 3. I don't know if the listener agrees, but I don't know, like in seasons 1 and 2, we kept like fine tuning some things. And then in season 3, I really think we locked in. So pressure's on, guys. We just got to keep it going.
We have to remember how to talk into microphones again.
But before we get into the episodes, let's just do a brief catch up. What have we been up to? What have you been reading? What have you been watching? What's going on?
Ghost Inspectors, a brand new audio miniseries by Victoria Cheng.
And to a lesser extent, Jino Jang. Jino's name is on it.
I sort of helped with the mechanics of it, but the story is all Victoria. And Michael also helped with the mechanics of it and also acted in it.
A tiny bit.
For most of it, I would say.
You're a fan favorite, Michael.
Yeehaw.
Everyone loves Roger. Well, no, nobody loves Roger, but they think he's very funny.
Everyone loves to think Roger is just a weird guy.
Yeah.
Well, I method act every day of my life. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, no.
No, it's a joke.
No, but if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you will know that we are all podcast editors. And specifically, we work in audio drama. And so we took some time to make an audio drama of our own for the first time, which is very exciting. And it's out now, so you can listen to the whole thing all the way through.
And if I could just, I've had the privilege of seeing this, I think, twice this year, but there's like, if I could just have an aside to say, it's really something, I think I've told you both this, when I see two professionals who are like really good at the thing that they do, approach a challenge that is like at their level of expertise and like Y'all just like blew through that thing. It was just like competency, like I'm watching you ride the lightning, and it was just really cool. So please check out Ghost Inspectors. Yeah, it's really great.
Wow, thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
We did edit it extremely fast, and we hopefully will never do that again.
And you can tell. No, it's
No,
great.
no, it's really good, but it's because we were aiming for like a Halloween release, and so yeah, basically, if it helps the listener. When our last episode of season 3 came out in September, that was right before we started editing Ghost Inspectors. We had recorded like part of it, but then we finished the bulk of recording in late September. And then after that, we just hit the ground running and just were editing for 3 months. But now, like, the show is done. So
While
that's kind
also
of like
working
insane.
our jobs at the same time.
Which is the truly impressive part, and why I say like matching your competency, you were able to turn out a really solid sounding show to a level of like ability that, I mean, you both are like naturals at this point, so you just have that sense. And so you can do that. You can work your like jobs and then come back to work on an audio drama and get it done in 3 months, which is just really impressive.
And we'll do it again at some point.
At some point. Maybe not to this speed, but more shows to come.
Hopefully not to this. You gotta live. You gotta sleep. You gotta eat.
Yeah.
So go listen to Ghost Inspectors. Rate it 5 stars. Leave a comment. And this has been our Nostalgia Club recap of season 9.
This is all secretly a promo, Barry. No, but we're here to talk about more than just Ghost Inspectors. Yeah, what have you guys been reading or watching? Because our show is about nostalgia, we hardly ever get to talk about things that we are currently watching or invested in. So I just thought it'd be fun to do like a quick little segment where we do talk about those things.
Well, we were talking about Wicked before we started
Yes.
recording.
Michael and I have seen Wicked, the adaptation part 1 musical movie, and we both enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was fun.
I
Jino
haven't-
should
I
see
haven't
it.
seen it.
And then maybe we were saying maybe next season we'll do a Wicked episode because we all have varying levels of nostalgia surrounding the musical Wicked.
And I have so much nostalgia for the L. Frank Baum novel. It brings me back to a time when I was in such a great... No, I'm kidding. I've never read it, but I have chaotically pitched that we do an episode in reference to it.
Do we have to?
No.
I don't think we can read it, but we can research some stuff about it and talk about it.
We could watch the OG Wizard of Oz and
Oh,
Wicked.
true.
It's been a while since I've
It's been
watched
a
the
really,
OG.
really long time since I watched the OG Wizard of Oz. I don't actually know when or if I watched it. I think Wizard of Oz is another one of those movies where...
You kind of absorb it through osmosis.
Yeah, you absorb it through seeing it. Similar to some of the Disney movies where I'm... Like the early like Disney princess movies where I'm like, I'm not super entirely sure that I watched this movie. But I might have just read a book. I read a lot of those picture books that are like adapted versions of the movie with like full color pictures from the movie.
Those are
so
great.
I think because I associate, it's like I know the story and I associate it with the images. In my head, it almost is like watching the movie.
I had those books as a kid. I'm pretty sure I watched Wizard of Oz when I was a little kid, and it freaked me out, those flying monkeys. But my grandfather is sort of like a classic movie aficionado, so I must have played around there. But yeah, we could do like a Wizard of Oz themed episode, perhaps.
I just finished reading Jade City by Fonda Lee, and I immediately want to read the second and third books. It's like a trilogy. The way I would describe it is definitely reminiscent of like 80s Hong Kong gangster shows, which I grew up watching. So it's like, I guess kind of nostalgic in that way. But it's like if the gangsters had superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very fun. There's a lot of like political drama, actually like political and family drama more so than like action. There's obviously like a lot of like action and violence still.
Is it sort of like urban fantasy, sort of? Or is it more like fantasy, like less technology, more magic?
I guess technically it is maybe an urban fantasy. I don't know. Like, I think sometimes I like struggle to like define what urban fantasy is, but it is basically like it's an island city that's like developed with cars and industrialization and stuff. But they also have this magical jade that is a natural resource to the island, and they're the only ones who can mine it. And also, people who have like ancestry on the island are naturally more able to use jade. So like foreigners can't use it because they don't have like the natural baseline resistance required to use jade and harness it.
They're not like inoculated.
Yeah, but then near the beginning of the novel, foreign powers start developing like a drug that does allow them to use it. So then it becomes like sort of like a power struggle, not just on the island, because there are like these rival gangs in a way, like rival clans that are like vying for control of the city, but also they're having to deal with people on the outside who are looking in and being like, we kind of want some of that jade to be really useful for like war and stuff. And they're like, don't know how we feel about that. So it's very interesting.
International socio-political tension.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really neat how in maybe like the recent couple of decades, we've seen a lot more fantasy or like sci-fi stories inspired by Asian culture, created by Asian or Asian American authors. It's been really nice to see. Growing up, all we had was Avatar, made by 2 white guys. Did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
But, it's nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's happening.
You weren't spoiled for choice.
No, not at all.
What about you two?
I had to Google it because I sort of forgot, and I'm afraid I don't think I know how to pronounce the author's name, so I won't try. But there's this sci-fi book called The Circumference of the World that I read a few months ago. It's very strange. Just going off of, I'm just quoting something Google has fed me from either Goodreads or what is this, ancillaryreviewofbooks.org, which describes it as ostensibly a mystery concerning a book that may or may not exist, but there's no real plot to speak of. Rather, it's a construction of a patchwork of events and ideas interconnected through the experiences of the characters. So it's a very strange, trippy book where the nature of reality is sort of put into question, and there's weird parallels. I think the author has written a lot of like alternate history books, and so it kind of veers into that as well. It's very interesting. I'm also in the middle of reading a less trippy sci-fi book called The Quiet War. And that is, the cover is like, spaceship with what look like fighter jets in space. There was a major event on Earth that prompted some people to go into space and some people to try and stay and repair Earth. And some of those space people have like colonized the moons around Jupiter and have their own like polity. And then the people on Earth, they have their own polity and they have conflicted in the past. And now it looks like they're going to go to war again, which is a dynamic that I think is in a lot of different like near mid-future sci-fi. And I haven't finished it yet, but it's very interesting to me because the world building is very fascinating. You'd think you're getting into a military sci-fi novel, which I was like, yeah, sure, all right. I'm in for a little action and like, sure, talk to me about the details of this space fighter that I only have half context for. But the author, who I believe is a biologist, you run into this sometimes with these sci-fi novels where you think you're getting into one thing, and then the author's like, and here's one of my main characters. This main character is a biologist who repairs lakes, and I'm going to talk to you for like a half a chapter about the biology of a lake. And I'm like, this is great.
Nice.
Like the author's hyperfixation just sort of like dumped onto the page, and you're like, okay, we're doing this for a while now.
Yeah, and it seems to be tied into the main plot in an interesting way. But anyway, that's what I'm reading at the moment.
Nice.
Neat.
I don't consume a lot of media, sort of for a variety of reasons, not necessarily on purpose. The latest book I read, I told you guys both about, which is Michael Schur's book on moral philosophy, which I highly recommend you listen to.
That's on my list for the holidays.
It's really great.
Listen to it.
Michael Schur made The Good Place, and the cast of The Good Place comes back to read quotes or anecdotes in the audiobook, which is really exciting. And also, Michael Schur is just a really steady, very nice voice to listen to. The title's long. I'm going to look it up. How to Be Perfect, the correct answer to every moral question. It's not a story at all. It's sort of a story. It's like him recounting his own journey, learning moral philosophy up to writing The Good Place. So he sort of walks you through all sorts of different ways of understanding what it means to be a good person and what good actions are and what bad actions are, and how do we determine our place in the universe based on like what is goodness, and is it even possible to achieve goodness, and is free will even a thing, and should we try and it doesn't matter at all, and should we return the shopping cart? And I have thoughts about his shopping cart. Okay, here's the whole thing about the shopping cart. You know the thing where like, it doesn't cost very much to return a shopping cart.
Yeah.
So you might as well do it, and it's the perfect way to judge whether a person is, in this context, good or not. Like, do you do the bare minimum effort to return the shopping cart and make the lives of everyone around you that much better? Or do you leave the shopping cart in the middle of the parking lot, taking up space,
my biggest pet
damaging
peeve.
cars, making unnecessary work for the employees, and just because like no one's gonna make you return the shopping cart. You don't have to do it. But if you leave it there, you're not a good person. Because if you won't go that little extra mile to do good in the world, then what else won't you do to do good in the world? But Michael Schur's whole argument about the shopping cart, he tries to make it like a more balanced argument. Like, oh, what if there are employees dedicated to returning the shopping carts in the parking lot? Which I have never seen in my life. I think the businesses that employ these people that are specifically tasked with returning shopping carts from the parking lot are very few in number. And even if they exist, and even if they do this task that they are employed to, you should still return the shopping cart, because why would you make another human do an unnecessary task that you could easily do for so little energy? It's like people who like spill, like if they knock over a whole rack of shirts in like a Walmart or something and then go, there's people paid to clean that up. Let's go, Timmy. And they walk out with their little son. I don't know why they have a son. And it's like, yeah, like people are paid to clean up your mess that you've made in the store, but they have other things to do, and you made such a huge inconvenience for them. You could very easily just pick it up yourself. It doesn't take that much.
Yeah.
Just because someone is paid to do something doesn't mean they have to do it at your convenience.
Yeah.
Of course, anticipating that one is able. Typically, if you have the capability to knock over a clothes rack, you have the capability to pick it up. But, you know, if you're like in a mobility scooter or something and it's like physically taxing, then I suppose. But I only bring this up just so no one makes the assumption that Jino doesn't have that context, because he does. Because I know Jino.
The book gets into this too. A lot of like nuance of like, well, what if this? You know, the whole trolley problem. Like, oh, what if you know the person on this track? What if the 5 people in this track are doctors, but this one's your significant other? What if you're not in the trolley, but like in a different building, flipping a switch, and no one's going to know you did it?
What if one of them is me, the author of this book, and you won't be able to read the rest if you send it to me?
Exactly. Anyway, it's just a really fascinating book, and also the only book I've consumed in a very long time. Because I mostly watch a lot of YouTube videos.
That's so valid.
That's okay. I recently binged Checkmate Lincolnites, which is great. It's just a series debunking the lost cause mythology of the Civil War.
To be fair, I really haven't had time to read recently, and the only things that have gotten me to read are I got jury duty, and then I got sick, so I was like, I guess I'll read my book. Let's jump into episodes?
Yeah, let's do it.
So our first episode of season 3 was Avatar: The Last Airbender, which we've been wanting to do for such a long time. My follow-up story is that I went to the Avatar: The Last Airbender concert.
How was it?
And it was so good.
Ooh.
So they basically played all of like Jeremy Zuckerman's music live with like an orchestra, which honestly, the orchestra was not very big. And I was really impressed by like the sound that they were able to get with like not a lot of instruments. They had 4 vocalists, which I was like, oh yeah, there is a lot of like vocal chants and like just vocalizations in the music, which is really great. They had one guy who was in charge of like a bunch of different like cool woodwind instruments. So that was really neat.
Wow.
And they also had a lady on the like Chinese zither.
Guzheng?
Yes. It's the Chinese plucked zither. So it is a type of zither, but it's the Chinese version. Anyway, so they had a lady who was playing that. Oh, the big surprise, because I went to the one in LA, they had D. Bradley Baker guest appear at the very end to sing the Secret Tunnel song. And he sang the Secret Tunnel song. He went like full out. I'm sure there's probably videos that people got online. He did like a conversation with himself as Appa and Momo and the Secret Tunnel guy.
Oh my gosh.
So that was fun. Like he'd be like, what do you think, Momo? And he'd like do a little Momo and then like, it was so cool. I think the coolest part for me was basically like the way the show was structured. They did a lot of like cool lighting effects, by the way. But so the song would start playing and then there's a projector that would like play some clips from the show along with the music. But at the beginning of each song, they would put up like a title card to tell you like, this is the song we're playing. Every single person in that room had the exact same reactions I mean, probably not every single person, but like the majority of the people, like we all like gasped or like laughed at the same moments. And it was kind of surreal because like Avatar is a show that you watch at home. You're reacting like maybe with like your siblings or some friends, right? But so rarely do you have a chance to like be surrounded by that many Avatar fans and realize that you all had the same like emotional experience of the show. And
that's so cool.
For example, like we would all be like, ooh, and then we would all start laughing because we were all like, oh, we all did the ooh thing at the same time. So it's like kind of like a domino effect of like, we see the title card, we react, and then we laugh because we all reacted the same way. And they strongly encouraged, they were like, yeah, you guys can feel free to like cheer with us or like clap. It's not like supposed to be a silent like orchestral concert experience because they know that
it's a fan event.
It's a fan event. Yeah. And people dressed up. Yeah, it was just a really cool experience. And I love the soundtrack. And the coolest moment for sure was when they played the track for Aang's fight against Ozai. And you know, like when he does the energy bending thing. At this point in the show, I was like, okay, they're definitely going to do like half the lights on stage are going to be orange and half the lights are going to be blue. It'll match what happens in the show.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, and then they'll probably like flood the stage with blue light when he finally like takes away Ozai's bending and blah, blah, blah. They kind of did that, but they also turned on all the house lights. So all the lights in the theater turned on and everyone was like, whoa, like it was like, everyone gasped. It was like this huge thing.
Wow.
It was just, it was so cool.
That's awesome.
I immediately was like, because we went to the matinee show and I was like, should we go? Should we watch it again? Should we see if there were like resale tickets and like go again in the evening? No, but it was so cool.
What a unique experience that this show gives us again and again and again. It's so, I'm so glad that Avatar keeps having this renaissance over and over again.
Yeah.
I think when Netflix put it out on its streaming platform and everyone got to relive it and people realized, oh, people really like Avatar still. And then video games got announced, the movies got announced, and the TV show came out, obviously, and like tabletop Kickstarters broke records. And now the concert's happening because they brought the composer back to redo all the music again.
Yeah.
And, oh, it's so great. I hope the stuff everyone puts out is good, but I'm glad it's getting recognized at the very least.
I expected to go and just be like, yeah, like I love the soundtrack. It's really good music. I'm definitely going to like really enjoy this. But I just like enjoyed it to like a level that I didn't anticipate, I guess.
It sounded like a full experience.
Yeah.
Like a true performance.
Another cool thing I'm really glad that's happening is that people are taking music from shows and games and movies more seriously as like a concert. Like an orchestral concert opportunity.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe 30, 40 years ago, people would hear of that happening. Oh, we're going to do like a Mario concert. Be like, that's so dumb. No one wants that. But now people are taking that very seriously as like, oh, you can really make your career playing music from TV shows or movies or video games.
My favorite performances in high school, because I was in orchestra, we did play video game soundtracks once and like a medley of video game soundtracks.
Nice.
So that was really awesome. Just like getting to play music from like a thing that you really like. Like we played songs from the Frozen soundtrack, which was also really cool. There's like this whole like percussion bit where they're like digging in the ice and whatnot. Our conductor like went up to the percussionist and like took the mallet and was just like hitting a bunch of things to like try and get the right sound. It was like stuff like that is like, it's just really cool. And it's also been a while since I've been to an orchestra concert, going back to Avatar. But it definitely like brought back a lot of like really like fond memories of being in orchestra and getting to like enjoy soundtrack music in this way.
Yeah. It's such a cool space to be in, that like big room with the high ceilings and it's all dark.
It was in the Dolby Theater, which is where they do the Oscars.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So that was cool too.
Big ups for Avatar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Oscar treatment.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not something, I don't know, like the orchestra, like going to the orchestra, you know? That feels like a very like upper class bougie thing to do. But it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of local orchestras around, at least in larger cities, that have very reasonable tickets that you can attend. The last one I attended was actually at the Sydney Opera House.
Ooh.
Not to...
Well, there you go.
So I was in Australia on like a study abroad thing, and we were like, we have to go to the Sydney Opera House. It was me and my friend. We didn't care how we got in or what we saw. We were just like, we need to be in the Sydney Opera House so we can say we went to a concert at the Sydney Opera House. And the only show that had tickets selling for $20, and it was like world percussion, and it was at like 1 p.m. and we had a college student discount, so we're like, yeah, let's do it. And we sat down, and the stands were like half filled. We were the only people under the age of 60. And it was like half a dozen people on stage just like going nuts with these little like wooden clogs and stuff.
Wow.
And it was the strangest musical experience I've ever had. I can't say it was good. It was definitely world percussion.
Sounds about right.
And we left and we were both like, that wasn't good. We did not enjoy that. But we saw something at the Sydney Opera House. And so worth it.
Yeah.
100%.
It's a fun memory.
It was like $20, 20 Australian bucks, whatever that means.
I don't know the conversion.
Back in 2017 or whatever.
Dang, yeah.
That's
Any
great.
other Avatar stories? No? Should we move on?
Let's do it.
All right, our next episode was Holes.
Any holes news?
Any news about holes?
Anyone dig any holes recently?
Seen any holes out there in the world lately? Scattered around the landscape?
We recorded this right before there actually was news that a TV series pilot for Holes has been ordered at Disney+. Crazy timing, right? I personally have some thoughts, like why do a reboot when the original adaptation was already perfect? But who knows how this will go. If or when this series becomes a thing, maybe we'll do an episode about it.
It's a good book. Gosh, whenever I think back on it, I'm like, this is just one of those all-timers, huh?
This is one of the cases where I'm like, you could see the book or read the movie. Wait.
You said it with such confidence, I thought you intended it that way.
I watched in your eyes, I could see your eyes trying to process what you were saying as you were saying it. Perfect.
This is one of those
Technically, you
cases.
do, like...
You do see the book in the movie. Yeah, okay, so this is one of those where you could either watch the movie or read the book and still get like a really great experience of the story because it's just so good.
Well, I guess you could also you could hear the book.
You could also hear the book.
And you could hear the movie.
And if
That's
you knew
true.
Braille, you could feel the book.
Yeah. Like what are other ways?
Well, depending on... Nah, you can't smell the movie. And it would just
Hey.
smell like dirt anyway.
I mean, with smell-o-vision.
With smell-o-vision, it would smell like dirt until...
Well, it would smell like dirt, sweat, and adolescent pain.
Oof.
Until you reached God's thumb. And then you'd
Then it would
smell...
just be onions.
That's a
Then you'd
bad
smell
movie to smell.
onions.
Are there good movies to smell? What's the best movie to smell?
Ratatouille.
You got one bad scene in the sewer, and the rest is perfect.
That's something that if Disney doesn't get on at some point, I'd be amazed. Because it's obvious marketing opportunity.
Any food movie, right? Like Jon Favreau's Chef,
Yeah.
right? Good movie to smell.
You know, lately people have been doing this thing where they like watch the movie and then they like cook a bunch of dishes to like go with the movie.
Yeah.
And like people have done that for Lord of the Rings, which like I think would be really awesome. But then I was just like, oh, Ratatouille would be a great movie to do that for.
Yeah.
Just make a big pot of Ratatouille and then watch Ratatouille.
What do we got? We got mushroom cheese lightning
Oh my
skewer.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we
Cheese
have
and bread and like strawberry.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a good one to start off
Yeah, good one to
with.
start. And then we have garbage. And then we have bad soup becomes good soup. And then
So you got to make a bad soup first.
omelet you don't get to eat because you're late for work.
Oh, yeah. And that omelet looks so good in the movie,
Omelet
too.
is so good.
Yeah.
Nice crusty bread
Ooh,
that you
yeah.
crush and
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm amazed you remember all
I'm
this.
trying to remember. Like, they chop a bunch of celery, but I don't think that counts. You can't just, like, eat a big bowl of celery. I mean, you can. I can't stop you. What else we got?
I can stop you. I dare you to try.
Sweet bread au gusto, whatever the hell that is.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I
And
don't
then
know
you
what they
get a
turned
lot
that
of like
into.
fancy like French fine dining restaurants.
Yeah. Man, I'm hungry.
Oh, you have to drink like a whole bottle of wine.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
He gets linguine drunk.
You
so
drink a whole
have to-
bottle of wine and then you lose your inheritance.
I was about to tell a story and then I was like, no, we should do a Ratatouille episode. So I will save the story for the Ratatouille episode if and when we record that.
Oh, last one. You have to eat a whole bushel of grapes and then spew them out like
Oh,
a
yeah.
machine gun. Sometimes when you're watching a Pixar movie, you're like, this is beautiful. The artistry they put into this film, they really know how to craft a painting in this 3D medium. And then sometimes it's a big fat rat that's getting squished by a box shooting grapes out of its mouth. And you're like, this is a cartoon.
The one scene from that movie that always like sticks in my mind is when they all go through like the sanitizer.
Oh, and isn't the thing like, if you did that to a bunch of rats, they would die?
Yeah. They would get cooked. It's meant to kill germs. That would have really changed the tone of the movie. They're halfway, they're like setting up this big, like, we gotta save the restaurant. All right, rats. into the sanitizer and open it up, and oh no!
They just all come tumbling out. That's so dark.
Oh my gosh. Highly unfortunate.
And the thing is, because the sequence is, like you said, building up to save the restaurant, so the music is playing, the score,
Yeah, it's like
and then
the
it would just
montage is
immediately
beginning,
cut.
and then just like hard cut.
And then Linguini just takes his hat off and goes, I'm
Linguini
leaving
comes
the business.
in like, Remy, what's going on? And all the rats are silent, just looking at her.
I feel like they would all just leave at that point.
They all just like silently file out
They'd
the
be
door.
like, sorry, Remy, I don't think this is a good idea. We should go.
And then when Ego, the food critic, finally, like, no one's coming out, he goes into the back, and he just sees an empty kitchen and a bunch of dead rats on the floor.
Like food is half cooked, like burning on the stove. Just like a square mound of dead rats in the sanitizer.
That'd be a statement, that's
And
for
also
sure.
2 men in the freezer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure Linguini would go to jail at that point.
That's a you call in oh man, what's his name? Knives Out detective.
Benoit Blanc.
Benoit Blanc. That's when you call it Benoit Blanc. There's been the weirdest kidnapping. We have no idea why any of this happened.
He's like, it was the rats.
A strange occurrence I came across. A talking rat. Doesn't make sense. Compels me, though.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
What's next?
Okay, well, after Holes, we had Mean Girls, which, Michael, you weren't here for.
Wait, what were we talking about when we got off on a tangent about Ratatouille?
We're talking about Holes.
Okay.
Sorry, we
Holes
don't
is
have
great.
Holes is
Holes
great.
is great.
I think we had a really solid episode.
We did that thing where we cook food for the movie for Holes. It would be nothing, raw onions. nothing.
I think they have like baked bean slop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Be a bad movie to do food for.
We
then
also have
sploosh.
to, yes,
Yeah.
sploosh. We'd have
Some
to
kind of like fruit
It's
slurry.
pudding?
it's like peach,
Jello?
right?
Oh, yeah, they have canned peaches. Those
Yeah.
sounded good.
I don't want to do that one. Though.
Yeah, I don't think we should do that.
Ratatouille, great movie to cook.
I think
for.
maybe
Holes,
Holes
not
would
so
be
much.
one of the worst ones to do a like food companion movie thing.
Okay, someone can steal this idea, but get hopping on that trend, except the movie you're doing the food for is like a horrible movie to do the food for. Because everyone like, okay, we're doing it for the Lord of the Rings, and here's my TikTok about doing it for the Lord of the Rings. I'd
Yeah.
love to see one that's just the movie Holes, and it's just, here's your baked beans, here's your baked beans.
Here's your like
here's your
really
baked-
dirty water.
Yeah, yeah, here's your gallon jug of water.
Oh, man.
And here's a shovel.
Get digging.
Get digging. My gosh. Okay, one cute idea you could do. Did you guys ever get those like dirt cups in elementary school?
I love those with the
Oh,
gummy worms.
yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
give someone a tiny little plastic shovel, and they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
dig
yeah,
inside
yeah.
the dirt cup.
See, that would be cute.
That'd be cute.
That'd
I
be
loved
cute.
those as a kid.
You can't get around the raw onions.
Yeah.
You do have to eat those.
Yeah, several.
Just to
Several.
eat it like an apple. Anyways, Mean Girls.
Mean Girls.
They are sure mean girls.
So you weren't here for this, Michael.
Yeah.
I guess not. We had Michael Wilkins on.
Yeah.
That was I loved that episode. That was the only episode I hadn't been around for, but that was such a great episode.
Yeah,
and
I think-
loved Michael Wilkins. Michael Wilkins, he had such like a personal connection to it, and like all of his insights. Listen to that episode if you haven't.
It's a solid episode.
Michael, do you have any Mean Girls stories?
Do I have any Mean Girls
Oh,
stories?
yeah.
You know any Mean Girls, Michael? Call them out on this podcast.
I don't think I have any Mean Girls stories. I've seen the movie, love the movie. I haven't seen the new movie, so I don't know if I love the new movie. I guess I don't really have much to say. Any thoughts that you have?
One of the songs from the movie, I don't know if it's from the movie or if Renee Rapp just made a song slightly themed to the movie, but it's pretty good.
Nice.
I don't remember the name of the song. Oh, it's the Megan Thee Stallion one. Not my fault. I thought it had a cool beat. It's like sort of taking plot elements from the Mean Girls movie, but making it like sapphic. I think that's what the song is.
Fair enough. Sometimes I rewatch the scene of Rachel McAdams as Regina taking all the copies of the pages of the burn book and just spreading them throughout the school and watching the chaos, because Just great villainous
That
energy.
scene is the most iconic.
It's
And
great.
again, I am really sad that they didn't have that in the musical
Yeah, they
movie.
cut it.
Because they like modernized it, so they changed it into like a digital kind of like burn book distribution. Which is just, it's not the same
It's not
as
the
seeing
same.
the papers like fly through the air. Watching Regina like shove papers under classroom doors.
Yeah.
Modernizing movies that were made in like the 90s and before to include the internet and smartphones is such a risky and so often bad decision
Yeah.
because it adds this whole other element of like instant communication and instant like Googling that destroys so many plot lines. And it almost makes me not want to watch things that have been modernized because I'm like, oh, but then they're just all going to have smartphones and we're going to see a lot of texting scenes and them looking things up and like plot lines are going to start unraveling. There is a right way to do it, and we'll talk about it later in this episode.
Yes, we will.
But there's
well,
a right
in
way
the
to
next
do it.
episode, we're breaking the recap into 2 episodes, so
We'll talk about it at some point in Nostalgia Club. Won't tell you where. Listen to all of season 3 to find out where we'll talk about it.
no, I immediately thought of what you're bringing up, Jino.
No, they did a great job.
But anyways, I still recommend. I think it's been a year for like musical adaptations of things. So
I think that's good. I think we could all use a little more music in our lives. I don't think there's anything wrong with a movie musical.
yeah,
Yeah. Any music that you want. Sometimes I just put on that 12-hour loop of I was trying to think of something funny and memorific.
You trying to think of like a song from a musical?
I was trying to think of something that was funny, but also an in-joke to our podcast.
Jellicle Cats.
Jellicle Cats, there it is. Sometimes I put on a 12-hour loop, a custom-made 12-hour loop of Jino going, Jellicle Cats, one of us will die.
we can't. That was like so consistent in the last recap episode. We can't bring the Jellicle Cats into this one.
Was it I remember it was a lot, and then we cut a lot.
I did have to cut some of them because it just went on for too long.
I think my Jellicle Cats Unionize is one of my best
That one
moments.
was really good.
What was it? Jellicle Cats Unionize.
Unionize.
It's not fair that only one of us dies.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good.
Proud of
Oh
that
my
one.
gosh. After Mean Girls, we did the Mysterious Benedict Society.
Good episode. I think our most popular
Our
season
most
3
played
episode.
on Spotify.
Mm.
It's not our most popular episode of season 3, but I think it was the most played on Spotify.
And we had Isabella.
Yeah, we had Isabella. Best guest. Well, sorry, Michael Wilkins was
No, Michael Wilkins was great too.
Rip. Michael Wilkins, who totally has told us how much he listens to the show. Just a friggin' orbital strike.
No, big shout out
Beep,
to
beep, beep,
both
beep.
Isabella and Michael, who have repeatedly told us that they missed the podcast and keep asking when we're doing more Nostalgia Club.
We do it for you.
Yeah, so thank you for listening. Thank you for being guests on our show. Yeah, the Mysterious Benedict Society, though, was really good. Like, I think we, like, covered pretty much everything that we need to cover in that episode. I would love to, like, maybe do another Mysterious Benedict Society episode in the future.
Yeah.
See what those kids are up to. We got to find a way to, like, watch some of the series, though.
It's not back up. I just checked.
It's not back up, but it's
Still
probably
buried.
somewhere out there.
It's definitely got to be
Yeah,
somewhere. I'm sure we'll very legally get a hold of it.
This is not funny. It's a little sad, but I think a common thread in season 3 was just talking about things that like used to exist on streaming platforms and like no longer exist,
Brutal.
which is just kind of a bummer. Stop doing it.
We need physical media.
We need physical media. We need
Bring
more than
back
one
Blockbuster.
season of a show so that people can get invested in it and not just cancel shows like 3 weeks after they air or whatever. But I digress. After that, we talked about Shrek.
Speaking of properties that never die, Shrek.
Yeah, Shrek.
That's another thing where if you did the eating the movie, you'd have to eat a whole
Oh,
onion.
No. Also, like some bugs.
Oh, yeah. Some boogers and stuff.
Yeah.
Ew.
Oh, gosh. You'd have to eat like a cotton candy thing made of spider webs and bees.
Mm.
Okay.
Unless you were having fun with it. Unless it was actual cotton candy with like little gummy
I'm sure
bees.
yeah, like similar to holes where you could like make dirt cups instead
Yeah.
of.
The coward's way out.
Also, you'd have to eat a whole man at the end, like the dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Find your shortest friend.
is cooking and eating all the meals in a movie literally anytime anyone eats anything, you have to eat that thing?
No.
Yes.
Like for Lord of the Rings, like pick like the most iconic thing that
Like
they're
when they're
eating.
like, meat's back on the menu, boys. Do you have to find and eat a goblin?
Well, they don't. Oh yeah, because they do eat a goblin. Yeah, you have to find and eat a goblin.
Dang. Okay, that's my 2025 goal, is to acquire all of the ingredients necessary to do a full Lord of the Rings meal extravaganza.
You might not make it out alive.
Yeah, I was like, that's a lot of cooking and hard to find ingredients.
I think it would be fun to do a tongue-in-cheek one where you even do like, oh, and now you eat a goblin, but it's just, I don't know, some kind of substitute for that.
Substitute
like
for
chicken?
goblin?
Well, I was going to say meat, but it doesn't have, you could do some kind of Beyond Meat, or you could do like if you baked a cookie, like a green cookie,
Yeah.
and it was a
Cute.
goblin.
Yeah. I just think it's like a fun like party idea.
I like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had Puss in Boots: The Last Wish come out when we did that episode?
I think so, because I feel like I remember us talking about how I needed to watch it, because I haven't watched it.
You haven't watched it. Dang.
Oh, I think it might. I think it might not be on Netflix anymore. It was on my
No!
list
Oh.
because I saw, like, when Netflix is like leaving soon. So I was like, oh, I should watch it before it leaves. I think it's gone and I haven't watched it. I think that one's more likely to be on DVD though. So at some point,
Good movie.
I will watch it.
Joining the trend recently of 3D animated characters in big movies having panic attacks.
Mm.
But if I may say so, I think they did it the best because it's justified, because that's what the whole movie's about.
Yeah.
Dang. Wait, so is it a movie about like his anxiety?
It's not a spoiler to say. The movie's about him facing his death.
Oh, okay.
It's
I
about
see.
because Cats have 9 lives,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
realizes
yeah.
he's on his last life,
Ah.
and then suddenly because
he's
like,
facing his mortality.
he's a very braggadocious. He's got a lot of antics. He I don't fear death. I charge at death laughing in its face because I have 9 lives. So I can die over and over again. It's
Yeah.
fine. He reaches his last life and suddenly he's facing mortality, and it just it completely changes him as a person.
Ooh.
And so it's about him trying to grapple.
That's really
with that.
interesting. I'll definitely watch it. It's just like in Warrior Cats when fire starts. Sorry. It's on my list. I'll watch it. Next, we have the Underland Chronicles. So this was the second part of our Gregor series where...
I forgot we did this.
Yeah.
I was like, are you sure? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was last season.
That was a
We
trip.
finished reading all of Gregor and then we talked about it in one fell swoop.
Heavy.
It's heavy. We have talked about Gregor a lot already, so I feel like that one really wrapped it up. I feel like we got to talk about all the things that we wanted to talk about.
I think there was one thing.
Okay.
In book 4, because the book deals with a lot of tragedy and death, and heck, the whole last book is about, as we talked about in our episode, Gregor preparing to die and then realizing he has to learn how to live again.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish.
But there's a moment, and the open question of, will the Underland, creatures and civilizations be able to peacefully proceed into the future, and how long will it last? There's a moment in book 4 when our characters are fleeing the rats and they fly into a cave and the rats leave them be. And it's because the rats presumably have staked out that cave and realized there's dangerous creatures in there. And our characters fly into this chamber on their bats. And sure enough, there's 2 scorpions in there, 2 giant scorpions.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them has a bunch of smaller scorpions, like babies on its back, which they realize after they are flying around trying to fight these scorpions. And there's a moment when one of the characters is nabbed and falls, and it's like, oh, are the scorpions, are we about to see, we're due for a character death at this point in the book, and they seem to happen around this time.
Mm-hmm.
And, what was it, Hazard, the little boy who grew up learning how to sort of speak lizard, jumps down and starts, trying to communicate with the scorpions.
Yeah.
And then the scorpions hesitate. And they realize, wait a minute, you sort of forget in the moment that, all the creatures of the Underland have some degree of, sentience and communication. And I think the use of, a scorpion as that threat was a really great choice from a writing standpoint, because they're terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And a giant one, and it's very insectian. And you sort of forget that, the cockroaches have, a whole culture and communication. And you're immediately, under threat. Everyone's panicking. And yet, when Hazard gets down and he starts, trying to communicate and the scorpions hesitate, everyone realizes, because they've had all these experiences of communicating with all these different species and creatures, their minds they've been queued up to think, oh, it's possible to communicate. And everyone starts like de-escalating and dismounting their bats and going, try this, try that, because they've all had to like pick up little bits of language, and like all of these, this eclectic, diverse group of characters that all sort of speak different languages start trying to triangulate like how to communicate.
Which of us speaks the thing that's closest to what they speak? And maybe is there a way we can sort of like mime our way into a peace agreement?
Yeah, which was just, it was like the entire series felt like it had been like leading to that point. Because I was fully expecting, okay, this is going to be another instance where characters die and, the irreconcilability of the current panic and situation leads to a tragic outcome. But it wasn't. They were able to like de-escalate and communicate and realize that, they didn't have to fight. And I remember like almost crying in that moment because I was like, they're doing it.
Yay!
There can be peace. So yeah, great book. Great books.
Really great.
You describing that makes me think that the Underland would be an excellent TTRPG setting.
Ooh.
I think it would be
yeah,
an
for
incredible... Sure. I mean, there's just so much. There's just so much. And there's so
Yeah.
much like, sociopolitical tension, but there's also so many like fantastical creatures, like sentient creatures that can, you can chat with and stuff and hang out in these big caves, big mushrooms. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just love that world.
And there's like just like so much to explore. So
Mhm.
I also, complete random thing, I heard what I must be an apocryphal story of how in 2020, when all the, quarantine measures went into effect, the rats of New York were suddenly more starving than they were and
Oh.
factionalized.
ooh.
And that there was somewhere in Brooklyn what was called an alpha rat colony, and that there was a giant rat that a bunch of other rats would bring food to feed, or else the giant rat would eat the rats. And
That's incredible.
and that when there was construction going on somewhere, like part of like a street, was like collapsed or whatever, and that the alpha rat was killed and they pulled out like a giant rat. I heard this from my uncle whom I visited back east recently, which means take that with a grain of salt.
Hey, knowing New York rats,
yeah.
I buy it 100%.
But I was like, King Gorger,
Yeah.
alpha rat.
I mean, I totally buy that. The pandemic did crazy things to the animals that live in and adjacent to human society. Either they were like, hey, no more people, we can go nuts in these streets, or like, hey, no more people, all of our food is gone now. What do we do?
Yeah. Fascinating. I did see a really large rat in my apartment dumpster. That scared me a
Did you
while
say hello?
back. No, I literally like jumped out of my skin. Like I almost died. It was a big rat.
The human rat war continues.
Yeah.
I still remember Suzanne Collins in the Q&A at the end of the first Underland book being like, I'm scared of rats. And you should be too. So
Yeah.
I think you can be valid.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so our last episode of this part of the recap was the Hunger Games. So we did like a big Suzanne Collins thing. I have some thoughts that I wanted to talk about because there are some things that we didn't even talk about in like the first book that I feel like we should have talked about.
Sure,
And
yeah.
also, I have points,
There's a lot of like Hunger Games updates happening.
Oh yeah, and there's a
Hunger
new
Games
book coming out.
resurgence
Wait,
and
there
movie
is?
There's a new book coming out, and the movie is going to come out like a month later. Like
about
that's
Haymitch's
crazy.
games.
Yeah,
Oh,
so it's about
that's
Haymitch's
right.
games.
Yeah.
The fact that Suzanne Collins can not only lock down a book deal but a movie deal at the exact same time is crazy.
She is so powerful.
Yeah.
Too powerful.
Oh, sorry. The book I think comes out.
Perhaps. No, I'm kidding.
I think the book comes out in March, and then the movie comes out in November.
Which is a fast
Thanksgiving.
turnaround.
Thanksgiving is like Hunger Games time, I guess. Yeah.
Someone was like, there's a cornucopia in that first one. Yeah, this is a Thanksgiving
I mean,
movie.
I do associate Thanksgiving movies with the Hunger Games. But anyways, I do think it's funny though because I don't remember if I cut this from the episode or not, but in that episode, we were like, oh, Suzanne Collins only writes books when like she has something to say. Like so many people want a Haymitch Games book, but I don't think that would be
Yeah. And
Aged
then-
like milk.
Yep.
And then they announced it like, I don't know, a couple weeks before that episode came out. And I was like, guys, we totally ate our words. Anyways, we trust you, Suzanne Collins, and I'm excited to read the new book.
Even if it's not some grand statement on society, I'm sure there's things we can learn about Haymitch as a person.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's a well-crafted character piece.
yeah. I'm excited, but I'm also like, oof, that game was brutal. Because that was like, they had double the tributes that year was
Oh,
the whole
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But
Suzanne Collins, get your bread.
yeah.
Well, the good thing is that since we know how that game ends, she doesn't have to worry about creating too many death flags for certain characters that die in Haymitch's game.
That's true.
She can go all in and make us really sad.
We know Haymitch will survive, so...
Some kind of Rogue One-esque.
That is a little bit, yeah. Anyways.
You had points.
Yes, so one thing I realized, we didn't talk a lot about Rue in that episode. But I think like her character is just so important. So I was like, we should take a little moment in the recap just to like talk about Rue and how important she is to like the themes of the series. It's so sad. Katniss goes in and she immediately finds someone who reminds her of her sister. And she's like, I'm going to adopt this kid. And I really do think that like if Rue and Katniss had survived it till the end, Katniss would have like let Rue live. 100%. And the moment in Catching Fire that always gets me is when like she speaks to Rue's family. It's so sad. I think a lot of people talk about how like Rue really was like more like the Mockingjay, or she was like the source of the catalyst, I guess.
Her character has so much utility as symbolism and also humanizing Katniss, not only to the reader, but to the audience of the Hunger Games in the book, but also I think to radicalize Katniss.
Yeah.
Because I feel like until that point, she was only like, I'm going to survive.
Yeah.
It was her first like truly rebellious act. And that's what allowed her to be rebellious with Peeta and then later turned her into the Mockingjay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great point. Because, I mean, we don't know how all of the other Hunger Games went, but it's a moment of like Katniss and Rue having a connection in the middle of these death games that's based off of two strangers having a connection of like affection and care and protectivity. And that being something that can highlight the tragic nature of this thing. And wait, why does this have to happen? When you can potentially imagine that similar potential relationships in other Hunger Games did not come to be simply because these kids had been trained to favor their own survival at all costs and probably just tried to kill each other.
Yeah.
Again,
that actually reminds me of something, Michael, because in A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, there is kind of a similar like tribute moment where one of the other tributes kind of like memorializes the fallen tributes. Because in that game, like they didn't like remove the bodies.
Because before that game, the Hunger Games were just a punishment meant to instill maximum fear.
This was the first time they like televised it, but they still didn't have all the technology that they eventually had. And so one of the tributes did kind of do like kind of a memorial, but for the Capitol, they didn't read it as it being that way. They were just kind of like, why is he doing that? Like, that's kind of weird. But I think like when Katniss does it in her games, there's no way you could interpret that as anything but a memorial and a tribute to a really, truly tragic thing.
And I think this is where the movies really shine.
Yeah.
Because we get the perspective of the Capitol. Because the games were intended to be a punishment. They were intended to create maximum fear and distress amongst the districts, but also the tributes. So you don't want them empathizing with each other. You don't want them allying with each other because we're supposed to just make them feel terrorized.
Yeah.
So the entire game, like, set dogs that look like they're fallen tributes on them, make them like random wildfires and all that stuff. But then when you televise it, you make it an event.
Yeah.
Suddenly you have to start telling stories. And so you start saying, empathy's okay. It's okay for people to humanize these tributes. It's okay for them to form alliances. It's okay for them to start having drama with each other because that makes a show. And when you get Snow's game, you see the beginning of that. And then with Katniss's game, you get the final escalation of that of, whoops, the game makers let it go too far.
Yeah.
Now we have not only a truly tragic moment that everyone can empathize with, but also we finally have a tribute who's not going to let fear control her actions, but rather rage.
Yeah.
And that rage is not directed at the other tribute, it's directed at the games.
Yeah.
In that way, I'm like, I'm glad we got to see Snow's story. We can finally see like that ramping up of like, how did this start? Why did it get to this point? Why is Rue's death what makes the Hunger Games possible as a book series, not the games?
That is a great point, though, because it gives you that trajectory, that sense of like...
Still don't want to watch Snow run around a lot, like being like, ooh, I'm bad, but I'm hot, but I'm bad. I don't care for that. But I see why Suzanne Collins wanted to tell that story.
Yeah.
And I can trust that. Well, I guess we all can trust that her like depiction of Snow makes sense. It's like the way she crafts her worlds and the way she crafts the politics of her worlds and the trajectory of the societies within her world makes sense.
No, I really do think like she went into it saying like, this doesn't just happen overnight. There's not just like one like evil guy like pulling all the strings and that's why this happens. The Hunger Games were already happening before Snow became president. He was the one who like came up with the idea to like televise it and like make it this like spectacle. Even then, like it took like years for it to get to the level that it did.
And then Katniss was the right kind of person in the right place at the right time to trigger the right...
Yeah. The right mistakes were made and the right people looked the other way and whoops, revolution.
Yeah. Also, after we recorded that episode, I did finally watch Mockingjay Part 2.
What'd you think?
Oh, yes.
It was really sad. I was like, I don't really have too much that I want to say about it. I did think it was interesting that their portrayal of Coin was a lot warmer than she is in the book.
They wanted to make that betrayal.
Yeah, they wanted to make her friendlier to Katniss. Like in the book, you can tell like she doesn't like Katniss. She would rather they had Peeta. In the movie, she does try to like warm up to Katniss and sort of be like a motherly like mentor figure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was interesting. The other thing that I was reminded of, which I think maybe would be a funny thing to end on, was bring it back to like Gale's character arc. In the movie, he does say this in the book, but I think it like clarified for me more like when I like watched it in the adaptation. He basically says he wished that he had been in the games with Katniss, which like totally just like undermines like the trauma that she went through. He's just like, yeah, if it was me in the games with Katniss, then she would be in love with me or whatever.
You hear this all the time. Like, oh, if I was there, that robbery wouldn't have happened. I would have punched the robber in the face and saved all the orphans. Like, no, dude, stop it. A tragedy happened.
Yeah, no, like he basically was like, I wish I had been the one to like get reaped into the games with her. And I was like, this is so stupid. Because even Peeta is like, no, dude, like she wanted you. She wouldn't want that for you. She wants you to be safe and to like take care of your family and her family. Like if something happens to her, like she doesn't want. Because can you imagine if both Gale and Katniss got put into the Hunger Games and then their families are like screwed?
Gale probably would have gone like kill mode immediately.
Yeah. I think like Gale would have played the game.
This is an interesting... I haven't actually considered this before.
Yeah, like if it had been Gale and Katniss instead of Katniss and Peeta.
Like Gale's all about survival, and he's also like he's the one who's like, we got to run away. He doesn't want to stay in town and enact change. Like that's not his core. Like of course he helps Katniss's family because he's a good person, but his core belief is like, if the going gets bad, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the games, he's going to be like, I need to do everything possible to end this as fast as possible and get me out of here.
Yeah.
And maybe Katniss instead of me or whatever. But then Katniss probably would not have been radicalized because Gale would not have let those moments happen.
Probably not.
Also, Katniss would have been in such a different headspace if she had been in there with like her best friend, because they're both obviously going to try and get the other person out.
Yeah.
And so...
Because it took so long for her to
would
think...
Katniss have even, like, teamed up with Rue? Not that she, like, teamed up with Rue, like, because she was, like, thinks she's expendable or whatever. But, like, I just feel like she wouldn't even have had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Because she'd be like, no, like, Gale and I guess it's similar to, like, in Catching Fire when, like, she goes in with Peeta. And she's just like, my only goal is to get Peeta out. And then so even when they form alliances with the others, she's
super
like...
tenuous.
It's at arm's length, you know? Like at any moment. Yeah. Because she's at all times just being like, is it time to leave? The number of tributes is getting lower. I think we should get out. So, like, she would have just been in, like, such a different place.
Yeah. She would have been like, I don't trust Rue. What if she tries to poison me in my sleep? Blah, blah, blah.
Her being basically alone out there, especially even separate from Peeta, because Peeta has his whole side quest. Her will and her, like, personality and impulses are being eclipsed by no one at that point.
Yeah.
And she has the, like, necessary skills and abilities to, like, do her best to take care of herself out there in a way that probably a lot of the other tributes don't.
Yeah.
And then gets put into the right situations. Again, right person at the right time, sees Rue, thinks of her little sister.
Yeah. I don't think that she would have, like, mistrusted Rue, but I do think Gale probably would have influenced her to not get close.
Yeah.
Like, I think Gale would be like, I get it. we both have younger siblings. I get that you like want to take care of this girl, but we can't afford that. Like we gotta
Gale's
focus
even
on
more
survival.
pragmatic than Katniss.
Yeah. Anyways, I just thought that was like such a stupid thing for Gale to say. Just to be like, yeah, if I had been in there, like everything would have been fixed. Just, dude, like
I would have punched the Capitol in the face.
Yeah.
It saved
it's
the
just
day.
like Gale watched everything that Katniss went through, and still, there's no way that he can ever understand what she went through because he didn't go through it.
That's a really, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. That's so interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Gale instead of Peeta. Worst case scenario, it's Gale and Prim in the games.
If it was Gale and Prim, I think he would just like put his all into like trying to get Prim out.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, she's got like no survival instinct, so I think it'd be really hard.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like, because Peeta's whole thing at the top of the games, just in a practical sense, was like, run from the cornucopia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what Peeta does. I think Katniss is even like later than Peeta in terms of getting out of there. Although we did have that open question of like, did Peeta actually run away? Was he caught? Did he try to I think he was caught. I think he was legit caught.
Yeah.
But that creates like a question where it's like, okay, no doubt Prim and Gale are told get away from the cornucopia. I don't know, like if Peeta was caught, I don't know if Prim
Yeah, like
makes it into the woods without getting caught.
The reason Peeta survived getting caught, basically, because like normally if he got caught, he probably would have just been killed.
Yeah.
But the reason they kept him alive was because they were like, okay, he can help us get to Katniss.
Yeah.
Which I guess maybe in a sense, if they like used Prim as... Oh, wait, no, but Katniss is in the game, sorry.
Yeah, so it would have been Gale, and probably Gale, while he's skilled, wouldn't have necessarily made the same impact as Katniss. Because I think Katniss had min-maxed her bow abilities. So
No,
she...
speaking of just like media training wise, I feel like Gale would not play the PR game whatsoever.
No, and weirdly, I feel like Katniss' expression of rage in the like, show off your talents for the judges or
Yeah.
whatever, she doesn't have as much, I think, self-control as Gale does, because Gale is just that pragmatic, where
Yeah.
it's like, get in, do what I need to do, get out. I don't think he would have shot the apple through the mouth of that like boar that the judges
Yeah.
were eating.
I
He
think
wouldn't
he
have
would've-
made a big impression.
He would have like performed well, but like, yeah.
Been sort of written off a little bit.
Oh my gosh, this is so interesting.
He might, honestly, there's a version of that where he actually just shoots the game master.
There is a
Oh,
version
that's
of
true.
that.
And then
Yeah.
he just gets...
And then he
I
just
don't
gets
think-
executed.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think he would, because then he knows that there's no chance of him
Making it
making
back.
it home.
Yeah.
True, but if he got to the point where he was low enough, where he
That's
was just
true.
like angry
I
enough.
think it really, really depends on like who is in the game with him.
Yeah.
Because if it was like Gale and Prim, I don't think he would make that risk, because he's like, it's more important that I protect Prim for as long as possible and get her out.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I do think, unless Gale made a break specifically for Prim, and even then, because he would have to go only as slow as her, and she's not Katniss,
Yeah.
I think Prim would have got caught. I don't think she had Peeta's people skills.
Yeah.
And then it would just be Gale, and I don't know, maybe Gale goes full Rambo at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like hunts down the careers. But yeah, I don't know.
Still would not have solved his love life problem if he
No.
was in the games.
No.
Anyways,
So the
so
Hunger Games, you would be eating like some bread,
a whole roast pig.
a whole roast pig. They get some rabbits in there at some point.
And then you'd have to eat poison berries and die.
Poison berries and die. And then someone else pretends to eat them and doesn't die. A lot of drinking. Stab a table, which is mahogany. So you got to find a mahogany table.
So we're now doing actions too.
Yeah, and then you have to enact the Hunger Games.
You have to go into
Oh
the
my
woods,
gosh. No.
be stung by bees,
Oh gosh, I hated that.
get
Still hate
horribly
that.
burned.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Maybe we don't do this.
Yeah. I'm gonna put that very low on the list of
Paint your
movies.
face like a rock.
Oh yeah, get really good at camouflage.
Get really good at making cakes and fondant. Like,
The movie's butchered that part.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's totally believable in the books that, like, Peter just smeared some mud on his face and laid real still. But the movies, he's like, and then I dabbled some green to emulate the moss. And some, remember, when you shade the rocks, you want to go dark first and then light to emulate the light.
It was a good thing I had this pocket mirror on me to carefully. I just still think of.
The thing is, like, he has to do his whole face, his arms, like any exposed skin. So it's like I could see him like carefully matching like his arm to the rock or whatever. But like, how do you do that for your face?
Also, like, if I remember correctly, it was like his upper shoulder and arm and face were out, so those were all painted, and the rest of him was like under the mud.
Yeah.
Just move more
How
mud.
did he? So if he painted one arm with the other arm, right, and then he just shoved that arm in the mud, why not just shove the other arm in the mud? Why did he need to paint that arm too?
He was flexing.
Was he? I guess.
I don't
He's
know.
like,
I guess
"I'm
you
not
gotta
making
leave
it out of
one
here
arm
alive."
in case danger. I don't know. Whatever.
Like if you're really gonna try to hide yourself in the mud, all you need is an air hole.
Yeah.
So
That's
just
true.
bury yourself and just like dig a little hole on your nose, and I guess just paint your nose. I don't know.
Maybe at that point he was too injured and just.
Too injured?
I can't move.
I'm too injured to put my arm in this mud. Instead, I'll have to carefully craft a masterpiece.
This arm was inspired by Monet's water lilies. A master of the impressionist style.
He gets like discovered immediately.
I just love the idea that he like spots one of the cameras and like sets up next to it and just does a full Bob Ross thing where he's like, I don't think I'm making it out of here, but I'll live my dreams regardless.
Maybe the sponsor sent him a mirror. No, I'm kidding.
Like a full watercolor set.
Yeah.
Some oil paints.
Wasn't it like he was sent like
No, he was sent nothing.
camouflage?
No, he was
stuff?
sent nothing.
Then
Because
no.
Haymitch had to reserve funds for Katniss.
No, I thought he was sent something and that's how he was able to like make
No, I
a
think he just made it
camouflage
out of
art.
dirt and stuff. And like leaves.
Yeah.
The most aesthetic dirt paint supplies I've ever seen.
The second game happens and he's standing on the podium and immediately he gets a little package in the air and it's full oil paints and
Yeah,
he's like,
Haymitch is
I'm
like,
gonna win.
that's the strategy, buddy. You're just gonna hide.
Starts slathering himself in paint.
Yeah. Wasn't it like Annie's game was like she just hid for most of it and then everyone else like drowned and she won?
Yeah.
I guess it could work.
And the Capitol was like, ugh, what a boring game.
So that's part 1 of our recap. We'll be back next week to cover the rest of the season.
Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, don't go
Don't
anywhere.
move.
If you're planning on traveling, cancel those travel plans. I don't care how much money you lose. You gotta stay
You gotta
right
be in
where
the
you
same
are.
exact spot that you're listening to this podcast.
You know what you can do while you're waiting for part 2 of this recap? Listen to Ghost Inspectors.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's a whole week. There's 7 episodes, so 1 episode a day.
Better start right now.
Yeah.
Until next time, meat is back on the menu, boys. Grab that guy and let's chow down.